Hello, my name is Matthias, and welcome to the FPL Scope and the weekly wildcard draft for GW24, where I try to select what I think is the best squad to have in Fantasy Premier League going forward in the next 4 to 5 game weeks and beyond, covering the blank game weeks, double game weeks, and everything in between. If you haven't seen this before, I basically do this in the style of a regular type of draft, as in the NBA draft or NFL draft, where the number one pick is the player that I think is the most important player to have currently in FPL, and the 15th player that I select is the player that I'm the most unsure about having in my squad currently on a wildcard, if you're on a wildcard yourself. I'm saving my wildcard until game week 30 or 31 probably myself, but if you are wildcarding this week for whatever reason, I think this is probably the way I would lean towards going. So let's just start with the number one pick, which is going to be Erling Haaland. As always, pretty much most of the season he's been the number one pick, apart from the small period where he was injured, but now he's back. They have Man City have fantastic fixtures. Everton at home next, which is not the best fixture, I guess, because Everton are kind of good defensively, especially away from home this season. But after that, the double game week with Chelsea at home and Brentford at home, especially that Chelsea defense at home seems fantastic. And the fact that they had 15 shots on target or something, 14 shots on target, I think, against Brentford now yesterday, as I'm recording this on a Tuesday. I'm sorry. In the Monday game against Brentford, they had a lot of shots on target, and that was without Haaland being super duper fantastic either. But maybe Brentford is a tough team for him because he still hasn't scored against Brentford. So that's maybe the only drawback with him in the double game week, because I think the Chelsea game, he could easily score 3 or 4 goals. So he just needs to provide an assist or potentially just a penalty goal or something against Brentford to have a fantastic game week. And then after that, pretty good fixtures there as well. Bournemouth away, which is still not the worst fixture now. I think Bournemouth are kind of tough to gauge. They are a team that you could easily beat. And then Man United at home, I think it's actually a really good fixture for Man City in particular, because Man City are the type of team that when they play against Burnley and Sheffield United and those types of teams, when they're up 3-0, they sort of just let off the gas and just ride out the 3-0 result. But against Man United, it seems like they just keep going. That's what they've done the last few seasons. That's what they've done historically when they've been better than Man United, and they are currently a lot better than Man United. So I expect Haaland to have a massive haul in that Man United match as well. And that goes along with all the other City assets that we're going to have in their team as well, including Phil Foden, who's number 2 on this list, because his hat-trick performance against Brentford basically tells you everything you need to know about Foden and how good he is this season. He plays basically every single game week just about now, and you saw when he plays with both De Bruyne and Haaland at the same time, like he did against Brentford, he's absolutely fantastic. So Foden is a terrific prospect to own going forward, and everything I said about Haaland when it comes to the fixtures, I can say about Foden as well. We already saw him score a hat-trick against Brentford away, so imagine what he can do against Brentford at home. The Chelsea fixture always nice as well for City, and also the Man United fixture is also really, really good. And Everton and Bournemouth are 2 pretty decent fixtures as well. City just look absolutely fantastic. If it wasn't for Mark Flecken's fantastic performance against Man City for Brentford, that would have been like a 5-6-7-0 type of win. So you can expect City to win those types of games pretty easily nowadays. So I think Foden is quite essential for that price. Essential is a dirty word, I know, amongst the FPL content creators, but I think Foden is a pretty important player to own and probably a pretty important player to start as well. I know a lot of people sadly had to bench him, and I don't really begrudge most of you guys who had to bench him, because you had likes of Richarlison, Watkins, Solanke, Haaland, all these great players with great fixtures. But from now on, don't bench Foden, because he's worth it. He's going to be really, really good, especially in a couple fixtures that really suit him well, like the one against Brentford. And I think, especially with Haaland and De Bruyne back in the fold, I think Foden is just going to be a really good asset to own in general. So he comes in at number 2. Number 3, we have Darwin Núñez, and he's actually a new player from last time. He is marked with green on his name, which means he's a new player from the last weekly wildcard draft. Haaland and Foden obviously were in the weekly wildcard draft last week, so I already foresaw both of them being good assets to have in FPL. Darwin, however, is someone that was rumored to be out of last game week against Arsenal, and he actually started on the bench. Whether this was a tactical approach from Klopp, just saying that he had a slight knock just to be able to bench him without it being like a massive story, or if he was actually injured. Regardless of that, Darwin has now gotten his rest, and we also saw how bad Liverpool looked without Darwin. They didn't really create much against Liverpool at all, or against Arsenal at all, and it just proves that Darwin, for all of his flaws or all of his major missed chances and stuff, he is a vital cog to Liverpool, and he's probably the most nailed player outside of Salah when Salah is back healthy again for Liverpool. And seeing as Salah is not back healthy for Liverpool, Darwin is currently the best Liverpool player to own, in my opinion. He's also really easy to sell in Game Week 26 as well and buy someone else in his stead, whether that's Ivan Toney, if you want to bring him in, if that's Watkins. It depends who you have as the third striker in this option. Or if you want to go with someone like Cunha, who just scored a hat-trick for Wolves and has a really good fixture at home to Sheffield United in 26. There are really good options to sell Darwin in Game 26 and just have him for the Burnley at home fixture and then the double game week against Brentford away and Luton at home in the double game week in 25. And I think Darwin is set to start all 3 games. I think he is going to be a pretty good player for those matches. He is a bit of a chaotic player, so maybe you don't really like Darwin, but I think for these 2 game weeks, I think it's very easy to punt on Darwin and then be able to sell him straight away. You don't really have to have him for long. I just think his ceiling is just way too high to not have him for these 2 game weeks in particular. So Darwin comes in at number 3 for me. Number 4, we have Kevin De Bruyne, a third City asset, and looking at how good City look offensively and looking at how they just keep conceding stupid goals defensively, and you can't really trust any of the defensive assets either. When it comes to playing time, maybe Nathan Ake, maybe he's the best bet. Maybe Kyle Walker, maybe it was just that one game that he was benched for or didn't play in, and now he's going to be back in the fold. Those 2 guys are decent, I guess, but apart from those 2 guys, I'm not sure. Guardiola is someone that you might consider as well, but I don't know. With Stones back healthy as well, it's really tough to know who's going to start for Man City. Maybe Ruben Diaz, but he doesn't really have much attacking returns potential or bonus potential, and he's also quite expensive. So yeah, I don't really like any of the City defenders that much. Ederson especially, like, just don't buy premium goalkeepers. I don't think it's a good idea, as you'll see as well with the goalkeepers that I have in this squad. But yeah, tripling up on their attack seems like the best option, and Haaland, De Bruyne, and Foden are the most nailed and the best players that they have offensively, so it just makes a lot of sense to have all 3 of them, it seems like to me. De Bruyne is quite expensive though, so if Salah is back, then maybe you could potentially sell De Bruyne to get Salah, but I think you can actually afford to have De Bruyne, Haaland, and Salah in the same squad potentially, as well, as we'll get to talk about later on in this weekly wildcard draft. At the end, I'm going to talk a bit about Salah and the prospects of bringing him in, because I wouldn't have him in the wildcard draft for this game week in particular, because we don't really know yet if he's going to be fit to play. But if he gets some minutes against Burnley, I think he's a really enticing option for Game Week 25. So just keep that in mind on your wildcard if you are currently on a wildcard yourself. Next up, number 5, we have Gabriel Magalhaes from Arsenal. Recently had a 17-pointer. Recently had a pretty good defensive performance against Liverpool as well. I think he obviously scored an own goal in that game, but he also almost had an assist. Some would say that he should have had an assist there, but either way, he's a good attacking threat player on set pieces, as we know. He scored 2 headers pretty recently with that 17-pointer. Arsenal are a really good defense. They don't really concede that many chances, and they have kept quite a few clean sheets as well this season. So I think Gabriel is just a really safe player to have. I'm recording this before we know if Arsenal play in Game Week 29 or not, but if Chelsea do go out of the FA Cup replay against Aston Villa, Arsenal actually have a game in Game Week 29 as well, which could be really helpful for you. This wildcard in particular is sort of with free hits 29 in mind, if you have your free hit potentially in mind. But even if you don't have your free hit, I think still this would be a pretty good draft. But eventually, the next few weeks, maybe I will incorporate a couple alternatives at the end of the video. But yeah, write down in the comments if you'd like to see that and you're still watching at this point. But yeah, Gabriel, just a fantastic player that I really like. He's always been my favorite defender in FPL, especially for the cheap price that he is, playing for one of the best defenses in the league and also having that huge goal threat on set pieces. I think he's just a fun player to have in general. And as we know by now, he's completely nailed for Arsenal. All the talk about him potentially being a droppable asset is completely out the window. Maybe when Timber comes back and Arteta gets to try out the weird thing he did at the start of the season, maybe Gabriel will be some sort of a rotation threat, but I don't think so. I think he's going to be starting most games for Arsenal because he is a really, really good player and yeah, really, really good FPL player as well. And as you can see from the games, Burnley away Game Week 25, Sheffield United away in Game Week 27, West Ham and Newcastle and the other game weeks there as well. Not too bad. And he might play in Game Week 29 like I mentioned. So I think Gabriel is just a really, really good pick as well to have, and my favorite defender currently in FPL. Number 6, we have a new player, and that is Hwang or Hwang, depending on how you say it. Handsome Wang, as I like to call him. He's become a kind of a cult favorite, cult hero in my team. He got a big 14-pointer just before he left for Asian Cup. And now he's actually going to come back from Asian Cup. He might actually be ready to play in GW24 already, because South Korea went out of the Asian Cup in the semi-final against Jordan. And unlike AFCON, there is no third place final in the Asian Cup, which means that Hwang is ready to go back and play for Wolverhampton again, maybe already for the match against Brentford, which is up next for him. But even still, he has Spurs away in Game 25, which is the game week, which is double game week anyway, where you could potentially just bench him. And he's not going to be that big of a threat to your rank either, because most people will not have Hwang Hee-chan, because he is a pretty rare player to have currently because he's in the Asian Cup. But after that is the main benefactor for this, because we are going to have a couple players that blank in Game Week 26, so we need all the players that we could potentially need to use in Game Week 26 and beyond in this team as well. And Hwang comes in really nicely there with Sheffield United at home in that fixture. So I think Wolverhampton is a really nice team to have for Game Week 26 if you have a lot of those double Game Week players in Game Week 25. The downside to Wolves is the fact that they most likely don't play in Game Week 29. We don't know yet completely. Maybe both they go out, can't remember who they play, and then Bournemouth as well. They have like pretty decent fixtures. I think Wolves play Brighton, which they could easily go out against, and then Bournemouth have Leicester. Those are the teams that they are facing. But if either one of those teams make it through to the next stage in the FA Cup, then Wolves and Bournemouth will blank in Game Week 29. Or at least Wolves will blank in Game Week 29, because Bournemouth might get the Luton fixture put into Game Week 29, but that's besides the point. But most likely, I think more likely than not, Wolves don't have a fixture in Game Week 29, which is sort of a downside, but it's also sort of an upside if you are using your free hit in 29, like me. I think it's actually a really huge benefactor, because most people who are not going to free hit in 29 will not touch the likes of Hwang Hee-chan and Cunha and Neto, because they will get only players that play in 29. And that could give you a huge advantage for the game weeks in Game Week 26, 27, and 28 before you free hit in Game Week 29, because they have really good fixtures there. They have Newcastle away, which is tough on paper, I guess, but we just saw Luton score 4 goals against Newcastle as well at St. James's Park, so that could also be a really high-scoring game. So I really like Game Week 26, 27, 28 for Wolves, and that's why I really want to have Wolves players for those fixtures. Like I mentioned, you can get Cunha in for Darwin in Game Week 26, and if you already have Hwang Hee-chan or potentially Pedro Neto, who's also a really good pick, then you have a double up on the Wolves attack for those really good fixtures where most people will not have them. So I think that's really interesting players to have. But especially Hwang Hee-chan, he's the penalty taker for Wolves. He's been in absolutely terrific form. He's been pretty good for South Korea as well in the Asian Cup. And now he's coming back, and he's going to be really nice and ready to go for Game 26 as well. So really like Hwang Hee-chan as a pick. Number 7, we have Cole Palmer, and this is just a pretty simple pick every single game week, really, or every single weekly wildcard draft. Palmer is just terrific value. They don't have the best fixtures. They have 3 away fixtures and a blank fixture in the next 4, so that's the only downside to Palmer. But we've seen him now against Wolves, and before that as well. He just keeps getting points in these matches, even though Chelsea struggle quite a lot. Palmer is absolutely amazing. He scores open play goals. He scores penalties. He gets a lot of points for Chelsea in general, whether they play tough teams or they play easy teams. He's just going to be a really good asset to have. So I do sort of get the managers that want to sell him just to be able to have as many double game week players in 26 or in game week 25, and then still have players that play in game week 25 as well. Because Palmer doesn't double in 25 and doesn't have a game in 26, which is the huge downside to Palmer. But I think just the value in him is just too high to sell him, especially if you have a lot of value tied into him. If you brought him at like 4.9 or 5.0 or even 5.2 or something, he's 5.9 now, I think. That's quite a lot of value to give up if you've had him for a long time now. So I think he should still be in your squad. But if you don't have that much value tied into him, you need some enablers for double game week 25 or a game week 26, blank game week 26, then yeah, sure, you could go without Palmer, but I think he's just a really safe option to have for now and the future, because he's going to be one of the best players in FPL this season, as we already know. And he's proven that every single game week, even this past game week where he scored against Wolves in a huge loss for Chelsea. But yeah, Palmer's just a safe, nice pick, but you could go without him, I guess, and that's why he's number 7, sort of in the middle of the pack. Really, really, really nice, safe choice, but there are some downsides with the one fixture against Man City in the double game week, which is not really that big of a deal because you could easily just bench him. You don't have to start him in that fixture. There are a lot of good defensive fixtures. In Game 25, there are a lot of good attacking fixtures in Game 25 double game week. So having players you can bench for that game week isn't the worst. And then if you can survive with Palmer on the bench in game 26 and still have a starting 11 for that game week, he's perfect because he's going to be terrific both before and after blank game week 26 as well. So yeah, Palmer comes in at number 7. Number 8, we have Ollie Watkins still. I did actually expect to remove Watkins from the weekly wildcard draft this week and insert Tony into the team, but Watkins just had to go and get an 18-pointer in his last game, which means that he's just too difficult to give up, basically, especially seeing as we're going to sell Darwin in... we could potentially sell Darwin to Watkins in, like I mentioned earlier, we could sell Darwin to Watkins in game 26 and go without him for these next 2 game weeks. But then you also need to have money in the bank because Watkins is quite a bit more expensive than Darwin as well. So I just don't like the fact of going without Watkins, and especially if they get that fixture in game 29, which we'll know on Wednesday, later today. If you're watching this on the day that the video got released, maybe you already know that Aston Villa will play in 29, and he's even more essential. If it doesn't play in game 29, I shouldn't say essential for a number 8 player, but either way, he would be even more nice to have in your squad if he plays in game 29. But he just has terrific fixtures. Aston Villa have proven that they are one of the best teams in the league, even away from home now, winning 5-0. Just absolutely fantastic. So yeah, I just don't really dare going without Watkins. I think he's just been so consistent this year. He's been the best striker in the game all season, basically. Even better than Hwang, even though Hwang was injured for quite some time now. So yeah, Watkins is just terrific value regardless. But you could make the case that you would go with Tony instead because he has a double game week and then plays in 26 as well. But Watkins just has superior fixtures as well. So yeah, I just really like Watkins in general. He's just been a really good pick this season, and he comes in at number 8 for that reason. Number 9, we have Alfie Doughty, another player that blanks in game week 26, but he does have a really nice fixture now in game 24 against Sheffield United at home, and then he has a double game week fixture against Man United at home and Liverpool away. Man United at home is a pretty good fixture, especially seeing as Luton are a really good home side, and Man United haven't been the best this season, but Man United have scored quite a lot of goals lately, so maybe Doughty will get 2 games there where he doesn't get clean sheets, but Doughty has shown that he can get attacking returns in any game, basically. He's been the best defender, I think, since, game week 16 or something? He's been the best defender in terms of points in the whole of FPL for a really cheap price of 4.5 with a double game week, and potentially another double game week in 28 as well, because we know Luton could have another double with Bournemouth in game week 28. That's at least what is being rumored slightly now. They could also get game week 29, whether that's through going out of the cup and their opponents in game week 29, which I can't remember on the top of my head, going out of the cup as well. I think they have a decent chance of getting a game week 29 fixture regardless, whether it's Bournemouth or not in that game week. So they might potentially have way more fixtures than the rest of the players after the blank game week 26 fixture as well. So I don't mind Doughty at all for those fixtures. I think he's a cheaper and better option than most Liverpool defenders, to be honest. So yeah, he comes in at number 9, Alfie Doughty. Just really good offensively, really nice with the easy fixture in 24, double in 25, and then potentially a double in 28, and potentially a game in 29 on top of that as well. So yeah, Doughty just seems like a really nice pick as well in your defense for the upcoming game weeks. Number 10, we have Diogo Jota still. He keeps staying in this team just because of the fixtures, Burnley at home, and then that nice double game week fixture. I have him lower than Darwin because I think if Salah is back for game week 25, which I really, really expect, I think Jota is more a rotation risk than Darwin Nunez, because we know Salah's going to play, we know Darwin is going to play most likely, and then it's either Jota or Luis Diaz, and you also have Gakpo in there. You have a lot of other players that could play as well. So I think Jota is fine for those fixtures. I think he could potentially start all 3 against Burnley, Brentford, and Luton. So that's why I have him, obviously, because I think he's still a good pick. But I don't mind potentially having enough money in the bank to go from Jota to Salah quite easily in game week 25. So that's sort of what I've done with the squad. I'm going to talk more about that towards the end of the video. But Jota in his own right is just a really good player. Yes, he didn't do anything against Arsenal, but that's to be expected when Arsenal were that good, and Liverpool clearly liked Salah in that fixture because, yeah, he was so good against Arsenal the last time they played. But Jota is still a really good player in his own right, and especially in these easier fixtures, he's really, really good. He might even be the best captaincy option this week, arguably. I think Hwang is definitely in consideration for captaincy this week, and Darwin as well is a nice captaincy choice. And I think Jota is just a nice fail-safe for that game, but I'm not quite sure if he's going to play every single game, especially with Salah back in GW25. And also Jota has played a lot of games lately, and they do have a cup final coming up as well, where I think Jota would probably be the preferred player to play in that game. So I'm not 100% sure he's going to play from start against Luton, and that's sort of why I'm a bit hesitant on Jota, despite him being tremendous the last few game weeks, and I really regret not buying him in myself a couple game weeks ago, because he's just been terrific in FPL, and I think he's going to be a pretty good value prospect going forward as well. So he comes in at number 10. Number 11, we have Jared Branthwaite. Talking about really good value prospects, Branthwaite just keeps getting points. I keep saying this as well every week. He keeps getting points on the bench for me. 8 points this last game week, scoring the equalizer against Spurs. Before that, he had several clean sheets. And now Everton's fixtures are actually getting a bit nicer as well. They do have City now in the upcoming game week, but that's not too bad because we do have a lot of players that really need to play that game week. But after that, Branthwaite is just amazing, and he's going to get points in most game weeks, to be honest. So he's always a really nice player that you could start whenever you need him to. And in this weekly wildcard draft, he's actually gone up a bit, and he's actually like more of a 4th defender than a 5th defender in this draft, because I think he's worth it at this point. He's better than being your 5th option in defense, because he really should be playing more than he has been for my team, especially. I just think it's a terrific prospect to have. He showed his goal scoring acumen as well against Spurs. He has actually had that in the bag as well. Scored, I think, 5 goals or something in the Eredivisie last season as a defender. He has some goal threat as well. It's not only Tarkowski that can score goals for Everton on corners. And defensively, we know Everton have been really solid ever since Game Week 10, ever since most people sold Jordan Pickford in their fantasy teams. They've been really terrific defensively under Sean Dyche, who we know is one of those defensive managers who really have a good defense in place. So Branthwaite is just a mainstay in this week's wildcard draft team. And now he's even gotten a bit of a promotion to the 4th defender, potentially even 3rd defender, if you, depending on how you look at it, I guess. But I do have another big hit defender as well to come in this week's wildcard draft, who we'll get to pretty soon. We also have a starting goalkeeper, and that is still Dubravka. I'm very uneasy about Dubravka now, though, because he did concede 4 goals against Luton at home. It just doesn't seem like Newcastle can figure it out completely defensively. They just keep conceding a lot of goals, and Dubravka is suffering from it. He's probably, I don't know. It's just basically the fact that he's playing for a team that has been good in the past defensively, and he's really cheap, and he can get a lot of saves on his day. So that's basically why he's in currently. But they also have decent fixtures, that should also be said. But apart from that, I don't really know. I don't really know if I trust Newcastle's defense currently, but I just like to have the cheapest possible goalkeepers, just to have the flexibility to potentially get Salah quite easily in the next game week. So Dubravka stays in goal. I'm not too excited about it, but I don't think there's that many goalkeepers to choose from either. I don't really think there's any standout goalkeepers. You could go with someone like Kaminski or Flecken, who have double game weeks in Game Week 25 and more game weeks potentially after that as well, where they have doubles, or even play in the blanks in Game Week 29 potentially. I don't know. I think Dubravka is still my favorite option in goal, just because he plays for what should be a good defense, at least on paper. So yeah, we'll see. We'll give Newcastle 2 more game weeks, and after that, maybe Dubravka has to go in the weekly wildcard draft, but he still stays on as a really cheap enabler, at least in goal. Number 13, we have Van Hecke, and that is actually not the Brighton defender that I've used to have, who I'm going to talk about at the end of this video, because he has dropped out, because I think Van Hecke is just more nailed and also cheaper at this point, and I don't really know the attacking potential. I might as well just mention him now, of Estepinian, who's dropped out of this weekly wildcard draft since I had him in the wildcard draft since Game 20, but now I'm starting to get worried a little bit about Estepinian with his playing time, and also his offensive role hasn't been as attacking lately either. So I think Van Hecke for $1 million cheaper just seems like a better player to have currently. And like I said, I want to have as much money in the bank as possible to potentially be able to get in Salah for a pretty easy swap, I guess. So yeah, Van Hecke comes into the team. He's basically nailed in the Brighton defense. He does have some goal scoring threat as well. He does venture offensively sometimes, especially at set pieces, of course. He hasn't scored that many goals yet, but that might still happen. We know Lewis Dunk is probably kind of like Branthwaite. Lewis Dunk, who's the more senior player of the two in the central defense. Van Hecke sort of has Dunk to be that type of defender who can score goals, but Van Hecke is cheaper. He's still really nailed, and they do have fantastic fixtures, Brighton. So I figure I should have a Brighton player in this squad, because they just have really good fixtures. They could easily get clean sheets against Sheffield United, Fulham, potentially even Everton as well, who've played a lot of 0-0 matches lately. So yeah, Van Hecke is really good value, and yeah, he's basically the 5th defender in this team, even though the 5th defender that I haven't talked about yet, who I'm going to talk about now, is Virgil van Dijk. And I'm not sure about the Liverpool defender in this team. Like I mentioned, I do want as much money potentially available to do Jota to Salah if I can next game week, but with this squad I would have to do -4 to bring in Salah if need be for the next game week, because who knows, maybe Hwang gets injured in the game against Everton and you don't have like the best potential captain's option in Game Week 25, and then Salah comes back and looks like that guy to have as your captain, a potential triple captain in Game Week 25. So I like the option to just be close to getting Salah. And then it just depends if you have enough money to go for Trent or if you want to go with Virgil van Dijk. And it just also depends if you think Van Dijk is a better prospect than Trent at this moment, because Trent Alexander-Arnold is still clearly struggling with something. He got subbed off before the hour mark this past game against Arsenal and hasn't looked quite himself after he returned from injury. So I don't know. I'm not sure if I trust Trent Alexander-Arnold completely, and I do trust Virgil van Dijk completely, even though he messed up majorly against Arsenal this past game week. So I think Van Dijk just comes into the team. He has decent goal threat as well from set pieces. He's a bit cheaper than Trent Alexander-Arnold, so you could potentially upgrade Van Dijk to Estupiñán if you like that as well on your wildcard. If you don't really need that money in the bank to get Salah, if you feel good enough with Jota. But I figured you might as well triple up with Liverpool with Virgil van Dijk, Diogo Jota and Darwin in this squad. Even though I'm not completely sold on Jota or Virgil van Dijk, but more so Jota because I think he's still a viable option even if Salah is back. Van Dijk, still a really good player in his own right, and he also has some sort of a reputation of being a good double game week player. I don't think that should really count in general, because I don't think they really pay attention to when they're playing a double game week or not, but he tends to do well in these short stints between matches type of scenarios, I guess. So he's also completely nailed. He's always going to play for Liverpool, and especially now with Konate suspended for the next game. I mean, Van Dijk is always going to play for Liverpool, so he's a pretty secure starter with decent attacking threat, playing for a pretty good defense in Liverpool as well, playing decent matches with the double game week 25. So Virgil van Dijk makes it in as number 14. And then 15, the final pick is, as always, pretty much Alphonso Areola, and we'll see on Wednesday nights if West Ham have a fixture in Game Week 29 or not. Depends. If Aston Villa get knocked out of the cup against Chelsea, then they definitely blank or don't blank in Game Week 29. And that Game Week 29 fixture for Aston Villa is against West Ham. So you'd at least have a goalkeeper for Game Week 29 if that happens. So keep that in mind. But Areola is also kind of like Dubravka. I'm not sure about the goalkeepers currently. Not sure who I would go with if I had the wildcard currently, because I don't really think there are any standout goalkeepers. You could go with someone like Alisson, I guess. But like I said, I just don't think premium goalkeepers are worth it. So I would stay away from someone like that. Areola is much cheaper. Him and Dubravka are really, really cheap, which means you can maximize the potential in the rest of your team. Because goalkeepers, as we saw with Flecken now yesterday, played against Man City and got, 10 points from an assist and like 9 or 10 or 11 saves or something like that. Goalkeepers can have big games in really tough matches, and they can have really low scores in really easy on paper matches, like we saw with Dubravka against Luton. That's a really easy game on paper. If I told you that Flecken would outscore Dubravka by 9 points against Man City when Dubravka had Luton at home, you wouldn't have believed me. And that's just because goalkeepers are like that. So I prefer to just have pretty cheap goalkeepers for pretty good defensive teams, or pretty good teams at least. In Newcastle and West Ham, they haven't been good defensively this season, but yeah, I just still prefer Dubravka Areola as the goalkeeper rotation pair. They do rotate really nicely as well. You can see there Dubravka's tough fixture against Arsenal away. Areola has Brentford at home, which is still a decent fixture, even though West Ham tended to lose that game. Still a decent fixture for Areola to play. Other than that, you can play Dubravka pretty much every game week as well. So yeah, I just like that rotation pair quite a lot, especially if Areola gets that Game Week 29 fixture as well against Aston Villa if Chelsea knock Aston Villa out of the cup. So that's basically the squad for this game week with all the 15 picks selected, as you can see on the screen in front of you. You can also see 4 names marked with green: Van Hecke, Virgil van Dijk, Hwang Hee-chan and Darwin Núñez. And that means also 4 players have dropped out since last time on the last wildcard draft, which was on February the 2nd, only 4 days ago as I'm recording this. And those players are as follows. Estupiñán, like I already mentioned, I think Van Hecke is just a cheaper, more nailed, currently, it seems like, option. Estupiñán does have corners. He does have some upside as well if you do have extra money, or if you don't really care about Salah in your team. Then I could easily see you just upgrading Van Hecke to Estupiñán, because Estupiñán is a better prospect, because he could potentially play really high up, at least for spurts in matches. Maybe not all the time. He has played mostly as like a left centre back ever since he came back, but we know he could return back to his wing back role And if he does that, he's going to be just a tremendous asset. I really like his opinion, and I really don't like removing him, but I do it just because I like Salah even more. And Salah might be in the wildcard draft for next week as well, so we'll see about that. Kieran Trippier, sadly for him, had to be left out, but again, don't really trust Newcastle's defense that much that I want to spend 6.5 or something for Trippier at this point. He did get a 9-pointer from a goal and an assist. He's going to get those attacking returns. He's going to be a high bonus potential guy. They do have decent fixtures. So it's hard to leave him out, but it's also just because I want to save money and have someone with a double game week as well compared to Trippier. So that's why he's dropped out. Dominic Solanke, who was my captain this past game week, maybe that's why I have left him out, but also just because Darwin is such a great prospect now and he wasn't last week because he was slightly injured. Watkins is still really good, and Haaland's still really good, and I think Tony as well is even higher up in the pecking order than Solanke, possibly even Cunha. But Solanke, like I mentioned, is someone that you could bring in for Darwin in Game Week 26, because especially if Solanke gets a double Game Week 28, we'll know that probably by Game Week 26 as well. If he does get a double game week in Game Week 28, he's easy to just swap in back for Darwin, who's about the same price. So yeah, he's someone that you could go without for the next 2 game weeks, because they do have 2 difficult-ish fixtures. 3 difficult fixtures, actually, Bournemouth. I think they have, Fulham away, Newcastle away, and then Man City at home or something in the next 3. 3 kind of tough matches for Solanke, and I'm not quite sure about Bournemouth now either. Their performance against Nottingham Forest was just really like a massive letdown for me, especially as someone who had him as captain, because I expected a lot from him in that game. Nottingham Forest have not been good defensively this season, especially after Nuno Espirito Santo took over. And just to see Solanke do basically nothing all game in that game was just a huge letdown, so he's dropped because of that. Anthony Gordon has dropped out of the team because he is injured, so basically you don't really need him anymore, and I think Hwang is just a better pick, especially now with Harvey Barnes back for Newcastle. That means Gordon is more of a rotation risk as well, so he's not as good of a prospect anymore. So I think if you currently have Gordon and you're looking to sell him because he's not going to play these next few game weeks, it seems like with its injury, Hwang is a right and ready replacement right there, potentially even in this game week, but you don't necessarily need someone this game week. But I know a lot of you guys are looking to bring in Liverpool players as well if you're not on a wildcard. So, but yeah, I think Hwang is a really good option. Pedro Neto potentially as well from the same team. It's also a really good option for around that price of Gordon and cheaper. So yeah, some decent options there. Sadly, Olise is not an option anymore. He's injured for a while, 2 or 3 months now potentially, which is really sad. But it is what it is, I guess. But yeah, those are the players that I've dropped out. Those are the players that I've selected, the 15 players. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you like this weekly wildcard draft format. It seems to be like my most popular series on this YouTube channel, and it's personally my favorite one to make as well. I just really like looking at what is the best potential squad in FPL going forward. Basically, I think it's a nice way to gauge the value of the players within like a squad requirement, where you can't have all the premium assets in the same team, and you can't have all players being cheap. You sort of have to mix and match, and that's how you produce a team that is consisting of players that are really cheap and good and players that are really expensive and good, and see how they fit into the same team basically. But yeah, I did mention Salah. I do think this team is close enough for you to potentially, it depends on how much money you have in the bank, and how much money you have stocked into these players as well. But I think you could potentially do just Virgil van Dijk to a really cheap defender, possibly someone like 3.8, 3.9, or possibly even 4.4 or 4.5 if you have enough money for that as well. Virgil to someone cheap like that, and then Jota to Salah if you have enough money in the bank for that. I think you have some options there to get Salah back into your team potentially. You could also sell Watkins, I guess, to bring in that money as well. But yeah, I think having Salah in your thoughts is probably a good idea, because I think he's going to play a couple minutes for Liverpool in that Burnley fixture. I don't think he's going to start, but I think he's going to be pretty close to being ready for that game, and especially the double game week, I think he has a really good chance of being ready. So just have a Salah plan in mind potentially if you are interested in him, and especially if Haaland is potentially injured. That would be an easy way to get the money for Salah if you just sell Haaland and do a -4 that way if Haaland gets injured. But just in case, just have a plan for Salah, and be able to bring in Salah for a midfielder like Jota, for example. Don't double up on Liverpool attack or Liverpool defense instead, and or having someone like Alisson, Virgil van Dijk, and Darwin, for example. You wouldn't be able to get Salah easily, because you would have to sell one of those Liverpool assets on top of everything else. So yeah, just keep that in mind, I think, for Game Week 25, because that might be the game week for Salah when he's back in, proving everyone wrong. And most people won't have him, and he might be like the greatest differential of all time if you triple captain in that game week and he explodes. I think that's something that I looked to have for several game weeks, but now I sold Salah myself to get De Bruyne. So yeah, quite sad about that. But seeing as De Bruyne is number 4 pick in this draft, and I really like him. I think he looked really good in this past game as well, and he played a lot of minutes. So I think De Bruyne is really good, but Salah is someone that I would keep in my mind at least on a wildcard, or whether you're not on a wildcard either, for potentially a double game week 25. Really good fixtures for him. Either way, that has been the weekly wildcard draft for this week. Thank you for watching. Hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you next time. Bye.